Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel and welcome to this interview. So this is the project of Master Series and we are still picking up the best title for that. So you are free to contribute if you would like to in my LinkedIn group. Please follow up. And let me welcome today with me Kathleen Gage.
Oh, Lana, it's great to be here.
Thank you very much. Great. So let me shortly introduce your personality to the audience for everybody who will watch this interview. So Kathleen Gage is a visibility and marketing consultant and strategist for vegan and plant-based experts, businesses, and organizations. She is also a podcast host and the producer, and of course, vegan activist. And she has very, very profound experience, especially for the vegan marketing, for vegan businesses and plant-based startups. Is that everything correct?
That's pretty correct. I've had my business 31 years and it's gone through many changes over the last 31 years, obviously, because I became vegan in 2018. So prior to that, it wasn't even on my radar that I would be working in the vegan market.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's, compared to a lot of people that I know some of the people that have been vegan 50, 60, 70 years. And I even know a few that from birth have been vegan. But for me, my decision, first of all, was to go plant-based. It wasn't to become a vegan. And then as I went deeper and deeper into being a plant-based eater, I actually realized that I'm more of a vegan than just identifying as a plant-based eater. So it's really a lifestyle change and a lifestyle choice, and it's a philosophy. And a lot of people, they assume veganism is about the diet, and it really isn't. Veganism is about a philosophy of compassion to animals and all sentient beings.
Your primary motivation to switch vegan was?
Yeah, initially it was around eating. It wasn't, I didn't identify as a vegan, and I really avoided that term quite a bit. But at the time I was 64 years old and I was getting a lot of inflammation, and I decided that I needed to do something with the foods that I was consuming that were causing inflammation, which is sugar, oil, meat, dairy. All of that contributes to inflammation. So I decided I would, for a week, make a change. And in a week, I noticed an incredible change in the way I felt, my energy. And so I thought, okay, I'll do it for another week. Well, after another week, I felt even better, and one thing led to another. And the last time I consumed any meat or dairy was on September 16th, 2018. And so it was actually 6 months into my journey as a plant-based eater that I had watched a lot of the documentaries. I read a lot of the books. I read a lot of blog post articles, listened to podcast shows. And what I realized was it had really more to do with the animals than anything, and the environment. And I was at the grocery store walking by the meat department, and I literally stopped in my tracks as I looked at the meat, and I realized how much pain and suffering went into that particular department in the grocery store. And that was really the point where I said, I will never, ever consume meat or dairy again.
I agree with you also. I made also my research, and we are really lucky that up to date we have really plenty of researches and studies on different diseases cause inflammation and so on, caused exactly for the animal-based products. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's interesting because what I really like about what's going on right now with the awareness is that now there's more information out there about the true detriment to our health if we consume animal and dairy, and even putting the animals aside and the pain and suffering they go through, but really what's happening with people. And I'm noticing on a lot of programs there's more conversation about eating a whole food plant-based diet is healthier, and then it moves into the vegan conversation, because it's quite interesting when you tell somebody you're vegan, they either are very curious or they avoid you like the plague. It's like they think there's something really strange about compassion. So
then let me ask you the next question. So you built multiple platforms, from writing best-selling books to hosting vegan-focused podcast and consulting through vegan visibility. What inspired your pivot into vegan marketing, and how did your business strategy evolve around this mission?
That's a great question, Lena. I actually, as I mentioned, I started my business in 1994, so before a lot of people listening were even born. But I started my business in 1994, and I had been in broadcast media. I did marketing, and so my business was evolved around the marketing aspect of growing a small business. It had nothing to do with veganism at the time because, again, I knew nothing about it. I wasn't interested in it. And early on in 1997 is when I actually started getting involved in digital marketing and started writing books. My first book, I believe I wrote it in 1998 or 99. And it went nowhere because I didn't know how to market a book at that time. And then one thing led to another. And basically, my whole platform in my business was teaching people how to do digital marketing and how to get visibility. And when I became vegan, I didn't intend to switch my business over to the vegan market. But what I found was the longer that I was vegan and the more that I understood what it really meant and the businesses that were trying to grow in that space, I realized that I had some knowledge that could help people in that space. And it was very difficult for me to even think about helping businesses that didn't have that compassion. And so it really was, it was on one of my morning runs. I was out running near the river and I was thinking like, what is the number one challenge that I see with not only vegan businesses, but just businesses in general? And it's visibility. And it just kept coming to me, vegan visibility, vegan visibility. And that actually was how I first started with vegan visibility. And I thought, well, let's give it a try. And it was interesting because I had people saying, oh, there's not a big enough market within the vegan space and you're never going to make money and on and on and on. And I started buying into that. I was like, okay, they must be right. Well, then during that time, COVID hit and that was a rough time for a lot of businesses. But once I got really on the path of what I could offer to the vegan market, things started turning around dramatically. And I have some great clients I work with. I'm actually working on my next book. It should be published within the next 2 to 3 months. It's called Speak Out, and it's about using speaking to grow a mission, a message, and a movement.
In one of your LinkedIn posts, you address let's call the myth that veganism is too expensive by contrasting whole grain food staples with processed foods. So how can individuals and even families embrace affordable vegan eating in their daily lives?
That is such a great question because I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what eating vegan food is actually about. And really, any kind of plant-based food that's like beans, legumes, lentils, fruits, vegetables, all of that, and fruit, nuts and seeds, that's all vegan food. That's under the umbrella of vegan food. And where a lot of people are misguided or they misunderstand what it means to eat vegan, they think about the processed vegan meats like Impossible Burgers or I'm trying to think of some of the brand names, but they equate eating vegan with those types of foods when in reality, those types of foods oftentimes are very unhealthy too. They're ultra processed. And so to truly look at the cost comparison, one is the cost comparison up front, which is your grocery bill. And if you eat from the bulk section in the grocery store, like you buy bulk beans and nuts and seeds, and you don't buy the packaged ones, you're going to be actually getting a better price. The next thing is the long-term price that you're paying, which is your health. I'm 71 years old. I take no medication whatsoever, no prescription drugs. I'm extremely, extremely healthy. And I have doctors that are like, how do you stay so healthy? It's like I eat plants. But most people my age, they've done studies within the United States are on anywhere from 4 to 8 prescription drugs. And oftentimes those drugs are for preventable and reversible diseases like type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, heart disease, cancer. And a lot of that is preventable. So you have the short-term price and you have the long-term price. And I think we're we're a world today that we live in sound bites and we live in instant gratification. And a lot of people don't look to the long term. And younger people, a lot of them don't think beyond what's the next soundbite that I'm going to grab hold of, or the next clickbait title that I'm going to look at, or video. And it has to be 1 minute or less, or I'm not interested. And we've created a world where people live in that mindset.
Yes, so true. It's resonated me that you mentioned about these prescribed medications from 4 to 8 by average statistic that people of your age, especially seniors, take daily. It resonates me with the book of Michael Gregor, How Not to Die. Yeah, where
Yes.
a lot of hundreds, if not thousands, of researchers, and he also dedicated his life for that, actually, to make people really get to know the reasons of what they're eating, of their meal habits, of their lifestyle, also like exercises, socializing, and etc. Exactly for diabetes, and let's say for top 5 of diseases, and what you mentioned, to prescribe the medication. So exactly, he also mentioned in his book that the food can be the medicine.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting because more in the United States than I think anywhere in the world, we have big pharma who's in bed with healthcare, who's in bed with the food manufacturers. And a lot of people think that's conspiracy theory, but if they dig deep and they pull back the cover, they're going to see what the connection is. I mean, on our TV, I think there's only 2 countries in the world where pharmaceutical companies can do paid advertising. And when my mother-in-law was alive, she passed away a couple of years ago, but she lived on our property, and we had a home that she lived on in the back of the property. So she would come up every evening and we'd watch TV together. And I said, do you know how many commercials in a half hour are for prescription drugs? She goes, oh, maybe 1 or 2. I said, no. It's probably about 10 or 15. And we actually sat there with a pen and paper and we counted, and she was shocked. She goes, I never realized. And that's the thing. Most people live in such a state of denial or being unaware. They're not paying attention to what's being put right in front of them. And literally, we're being brainwashed by the powers that be, because I actually told my doctor recently, I said, I'm not very profitable to the healthcare system, because I don't need surgeries, I don't need medication, and the people that are the most profitable are the ones that are the sickest. So I think for people to really look at that and say, okay, like you mentioned Michael Gregor, Dr. Michael Gregor, he's also got the book on pandemics where he predicted the next pandemic, and he said the pandemics come out of zoology, animal-based foods, factory farming and things like that. And I think for people, if they just are willing to do some research, they would be surprised at how much they could turn their life around, how much of a quality of life they could have. Because I'm at an age now that I know that I'm on a short time frame. I maybe have 10, 15, 20 years, maybe a little bit longer. It's hard to say. But I look at that and I go, oh my gosh, what is the quality of life that I want during that time period? I don't want to be sitting in a doctor's office. I don't want to be having surgery after surgery. I want to be able to go out and go on a run. I want to go on a bike ride. I want to go on a hike. I want to, I want to be out there being physical.
True. Same to me. I agree. Same to me. Nobody believes, when I say I will turn in 2-3 weeks 47, and I mean the level of complexity of yoga that I'm practicing, and hiking, and all the other physical activity. Exactly, I agree with you. It's just, I think at the end, maybe just to be the example of yourself. Maybe this will convince people, if not globally, but at least people in your network. Yeah.
There must be something to that vegan eating, because, you don't get sick and you're so energetic. And we have a couple of, in the place that my mother-in-law lived in, we have a young couple that lives there now, and they're both in their 30s, and they're like, you run circles around us, because I'm always doing something. I'm working in my yard. I'm out walking the dogs. I'm still running my business. And they're like, where do you get this energy? And I said, from plants. It's really simple. But, I digress because we were going to talk about podcasting and all that. And I love talking about plant-based eating and veganism.
Yeah, same reaction to me when people who get to know me, some familiars meet me maybe once in a few years. Yeah, they also exclaim like, "Oh, you're not aging. What is your secret?"
What's your secret?
Food. 5 years and you still look like that or even better. Oh,
Absolutely.
you're not aging. What are you doing? How do you live?
Absolutely.
My next question. So, you've been featured on over 450 podcasts and spoken to more than 100,000. It's just think about the digits. Yeah, more than 100,000 professionals. Then, which particular story or moment resonated most deeply with you, if you can remember? Yeah, where you felt vegan messaging truly moved the needle.
Thank you for that question. And I would say it actually was before I went on the platform. I was working with a conference planner for it was a pet industry conference, and they were going to have about 600 or 700 people there. And it was early on when I had switched to plant-based eating. And I said, I really need you to know that I don't eat any meat. I don't eat any dairy. And I was wondering in my meals, could you possibly have the chef provide me with a plant-based meal? And she said, you know what we're going to do? On the buffet, we're going to try half of it plant-based and the other half what we've been serving. And now this is the pet industry. And I was like, okay. And so they did that. And she came up to me after the conference. She goes, that the plant-based foods went faster than anything else. She goes, I had more of our attendees come up and personally thank me for finally offering plant-based options. She said, we never even realized how many vegans we have in our market. And so for me, that was an opportunity behind the scenes to actually encourage some kind of a change. And so I think that everywhere we go, we have the opportunity. When I go to the grocery store, I often have people that I'll engage in conversations with. I just can't help myself, whether it's the clerk or somebody in the line. And we start talking, and 9 times out of 10, the people in line are going to say, "Oh, I've just got this inflammation, and I've got this." And I'll say, "May I offer a suggestion?" And they're like, okay. And I said, well, if you give up meat and dairy for just a week, try it for a week, you might be surprised at how you feel. And they go, oh, I could never give up cheese. And I said, well, I guess you want your inflammation. So I have a lot of opportunities where I can share that message, because I used to be kind of in your face, like, don't you know? And it took me till I was 64. So no, people don't know. We don't know what we don't know, but there's more information available now. So in answer to your question, I think the greatest impact I had was behind the scenes. And when I do presentations, I do bring up about lifestyle choices. Like, for example, I don't drink. I haven't had a drink in 43 years. I just did an interview with a podcast about not smoking. I was a 3-pack a day smoker. I tend to be very extreme in what I do. I gave up smoking when I was 40. So we're going back 31 years ago that I gave up smoking. And when she asked me to be on the podcast, it was like, wow, I haven't even thought about that in years, because it's just not a part of my DNA anymore. But I think we have many opportunities when a conversation starts moving in a certain direction. If somebody says they're not feeling good, or they're tired all the time, or they're dealing with inflammation, that's a great opportunity to say, may I offer a suggestion, or tell me more. And as they tell you more, you can share your information.
Fully agree. There is a room, there is a space for improvement, for a change every time.
Absolutely. And Lana, what's really interesting is that when COVID hit, now having my business for 31 years, I've had times where everything shut down because of outside forces. 9/11 was a big one, where all of a sudden conferences were canceled, travel was canceled, and my business literally went from a very, very healthy multiple 6-figure business to practically nothing overnight. I mean, literally. And In the US, there was the 2008 crash of the real estate market, and then with COVID. And what's interesting is this time around, because I've been on the platform so much, because I traveled so much, and because I lived a dream that I had had for many years, I wasn't as compelled to go out and get on a plane. Like now, if I can avoid getting on planes, I avoid it. And it's more because I just don't like the stress and the energy of a lot of people that are traveling, where there's certain things that are taking place today that years ago you wouldn't even have considered it, like fights on planes. It's like, what? Who fights on a plane? And so for me, the every time I've had to reinvent myself and pivot in my business, I look at it and I say, okay, what is it I really want to do at this point in my life? And so for me now, I don't work as hard as I used to by any stretch of the imagination. I'm very, very selective in who I work with one-on-one.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice with me, and I'm sure with many people listening us right now. Yeah, so I think you already partially answered one of question I kept in my mind, that when COVID disrupted your business, so you pivoted strategically, adopted new mindsets, and learn into AI training. So you have shared already the key lessons that make happen this transition. And yeah, that's about, as you said, resilience, about self-reflection, about analysis and innovation at the end. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
I would like next to dive a bit deeper to AI training that you took.
Okay.
Yeah, so you described as a game changer as well. And so, how are you integrating AI into vegan marketing or your podcast creation? And what potential do you see for vegan movement?
Well, I relate AI to back in the day when email just hit the marketplace, back when AOL was the big thing. And a lot of people resisted that. They said, "Oh, we're going to lose the human touch. I'm not going to use email." And when I used to do presentations back then, and I'd say, "How many of you have an email address?" Out of a group of 100, maybe one or two would raise their hand. And it's like now everybody has email. It's the same with the internet. When the internet came on board, people were like, oh, no, 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 I'm not going to use it. Well, it's either you learn how to adapt with it and make it work in an aligned way with what you're doing. It's the same with AI. A lot of people think AI is Chat GPT and that's it. There's so much more to it. I use AI for editing videos. I do my reels through a program called Clap. And let's say that I'm putting my show notes together for a podcast. What I do is we record the show, I get the transcripts, and I use a program called TurboCharge for that, or TurboScribe. And I get the transcripts, and then I put it into Chat GPT, and I work on prompts, and I say, okay, what I want this to be is X, Y, and Z. And I give very specific prompts. And I say, you are a world-class copywriter who knows how to write really good show notes. And so then I feed in the transcripts, and then based on that, I read through it, and then I tweak it. That saves me. I can get my show notes in about a half hour because I do massage it and rework it. I don't just take it as is, but it used to take me 3 or 4 hours to do show notes. So that right there has cut out a substantial amount of time that I can use for other things, whether it be taking my dog on a walk or promoting my business. Other uses of AI would be video creation. Other uses of AI would be I've created songs, and I'm not a singer. And I'm trying to think of the program, but basically everything that you do, there is an AI program that can help you to expedite the process and be more efficient. AI is not meant to replace you. It's meant to enhance the way that you do business and the way that you create in order to be much more efficient. So I think for people, I've seen some people that are just so dead set against AI, and what they're forgetting is that they're using AI on a regular basis. And so I think rather than resist it, it's look at it and say, what can I use this for to enhance the work that I'm doing and to be more efficient?
It's a tool to strategize and customize, I would say, your goal.
Absolutely. It's just like if I'm working in my garden and I have a little hand garden hoe. I'm digging in the dirt with that rather than using my fingers to dig in the dirt. I'm going to be more efficient by using the right tool in the right way. Now, if I'm using a spoon, it's not going to be as effective. So it's really looking at what tool do you need in order to accomplish the outcome that you're looking for. And I'm going through a certification program right now. And I'm looking at, okay, what are the things that really apply to what I want to be doing? And I don't have to take everything at 100% face value and say, oh, I'm definitely going to use that. I analyze it, I evaluate it, I test it. But I'm willing to step outside of my comfort zone and learn, because in learning it, I can teach other people. I was actually thinking just this morning on my morning walk with my dog, I was thinking I'm going to offer a class, a very short class for people within the vegan space on how to put together articles and blog posts based on ChatGPT, how to write the prompts, how to evaluate, how to edit, and how to come up with a really good product in a very short period of time so that they can every day put content out to their market based on what their market wants. And that's another thing, Lana, that people sometimes lose sight of. What is it that your market really enjoys? Some people enjoy video, some enjoy audio, some enjoy reading blog posts. Myself, I love to read. And so I oftentimes would much rather read a good blog post than watch a short form video. So know what your market wants, and the way to know is to ask them.
Amazing. Yeah, exactly. You offered a dozen books, yeah, that reached Amazon #1. So wow, congratulations, really.
Thank you.
Big achievement, yeah, really. What's one or two standout title or story from your writing process that helped shape your brand or mission in the vegan space?
One is to just do it, to write and write and write. There is not a day that goes by that I don't write. I love writing, and also look at your language patterns. When people say, oh, I don't like to write, or I don't like, this is where AI can help. I mean, you can record something. I had a dentist I was working with years ago that he goes, I want to write a book, but I don't have time. I said, I'll tell you what, let's set up 12-hour sessions a week apart. I'm going to interview you. And this was long before AI existed the way that we know it today. But I said, I'm going to interview you. We're going to get the transcripts, and then we're going to go through and we're going to rework it. You're going to read it to make sure we're on target. Then we send it to an editor. So he ended up writing a book. It was his life dream, and he was a very successful dentist. He made millions of dollars in his dental practice, and he had associates and a lot of, like 50 people in his staff. So he was extremely successful, but he really didn't have the time. So what we did is we recorded it. So the thing I encourage people to look at if you want to write, and this has been my whole thing too, is watch your language patterns, because if you say you can't do something, you're going to make that a reality. You want to look at what you need to do to get to the end result. So I was talking to a young woman the other day who wants more visibility. And I said, here's what I'm going to recommend you do. And I gave her a strategy. And I said, if you do this for 30 days, I'll have you on my podcast show. She's vegan. And I said, do it for 30 days. I will have you on my podcast show, because one of her goals is to get on podcast shows. Haven't heard back from her. So here I gave her the strategy. I gave her a real simple formula. I said, it doesn't have you 15 minutes a day. That's all you need to invest, but you need to commit to it for 30 days. So one of the strategies that has worked for me is consistency. You must be consistent if you want an end result. Did that answer your question?
Yes, amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Then what advice would you give to someone who wants to start a vegan-related business in 2025? So what should they do or don't, and what pitfalls should they avoid? And at the same time, do you believe it's easier to start a vegan business than 20 or 30 years ago?
I do think it's easier now because it's more socially acceptable, but I was actually talking to somebody who has a very large organization within the vegan space they have millions of subscribers. And she said, statistics indicate that 87% of people who identify as vegan today, within the first year of being vegan, 87% will not be vegan. And it's like, okay, they're plant-based eaters. They're not vegan, because I believe, my belief is, once you cross that invisible line, there's no going back. So 87%, it was probably that they weren't truly vegan. The other thing about starting a vegan business is be really clear why you're calling it a vegan business. Maybe it's not that you need to call it a vegan business. Maybe, it's just a service that you're offering that you target vegan businesses, but that's something you have to evaluate. But it's also, if you're going to be a vegan advisor, you're saying, I advise vegan businesses, I would be very hard pressed if you weren't vegan. If somebody came to me and said, I can help you grow your vegan business, the first question I'm going to ask them is, how long have you been vegan? And if they say, oh, I'm not vegan, it's like, well, it's about alignment, it's about ethics, and I would be really hard pressed because they wouldn't understand the mindset of a vegan. So I would say the number one recommendation would be, are you truly vegan? And do you know what that means? Do you subscribe to the vegan mindset, not plant-based eating, but vegan mindset?
True. Yeah. Thank you very much. And perhaps the last question for today. Looking ahead to 2030, what trends or breakthroughs, whether in plant-based foods, policies, consumer behavior, or technologies, do you believe will most significantly accelerate a kinder, more sustainable world?
I think that the trends are that there's more information available about what it means to be a vegan, and it's not just the in-your-face information. I think that's necessary. I think people need to know what goes on in factory farms, but I also think that there's the other side of the issue. As far as the trends, I think that a lot of unpredictability in the world. I think that with the weather patterns the way they are, and there are people that are climate deniers, and that's a great opportunity to write a blog post, do a podcast episode, do a video. This whole thing with Make America Healthy Again, I think it's a great concept, but they're really missing the mark because they want to put whole milk back in the schools. It's like, so I wrote a blog post about it. I said, okay, on the one hand, they're saying make America healthy again. On the other hand, who's lining their pockets? And I get very, very truthful about that kind of stuff. Then the whole thing with red dye number 3, in 1990, it was outlawed for makeup because it causes cancer, and yet they've been putting it in people's bodies. And so they're saying, okay, we're gonna do away with red dye number 3, but not until 2027. So I wrote an article and I said, why are we waiting? Is somebody profiting from the fact that people are still consuming this? So for me, I would say the trends would be to look at what's going on currently today, to do your research. I mean, do real fact checking, because there's all sorts of information out there. About 60 to 70% of what you're reading online is created through AI and through bots, and it is created in order to create a divide. So the thing that I would hope that people would look at, regardless of what side of the political issue they're on, is how much are they trying to divide us? How much are they trying to separate, to divide and conquer? And start looking at the similarities with other people and have those conversations. But I think the greatest trend of all is there are no trends. It's very unpredictable. It's going to constantly change. And you have to be able to be so flexible and so nimble and be able to pivot on a dime, but also look at your focus, because we are so disjointed and we're so distracted. Take time to go out in nature, take time to meditate, take time to eat healthy, take time to really look at what is your contribution to the movement as it's growing.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all for today. Dear all, that was Kathleen Gage. Thank you for sharing your valuable, truthful, and wise tips. Thank you for your valuable insights, and thank you for your optimism. Thank you for your enthusiasm. Thank you for your professionalism, and thank you for your personal statement, and thank you for your wisdom.
Thank you. And it is truly, truly a pleasure. I feel very blessed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.